I am with New York Times bestselling author John Searles, and I am so excited to share something that Alexa and I have cooked up with John that's going to be a bit of a surprise for you. We are going to be including his brand new book. You want to hold it up, John? His brand new
Yes,
book that's going to be coming out. Exactly when is the release date, John?
July 7th.
July 7th. So we are going to be including Single Girls in our July Brenda Novak book boxes, and you are getting signed copies. John came home to an entire porch full of boxes
Yes,
filled with books,
yes,
and he is
yes.
busy signing them, right, John?
Signing away with my pink pen.
Oh my gosh. And you got your pink shirt on and you got your pink cover.
Yes.
I just love it. So you may not be the most obvious choice at first glance for writing this kind of a book. What got you interested? Why don't you give us a little bit about your background? Tell us who you are for those who haven't become familiar. Most people know John because he's a great writer.
Uh, Thank you, first of all, Brenda, for selecting the book for your club, and thank you for everybody who's watching. I have to tell you, because I've never had a pink book cover before, so I decided for book tour this summer, I would buy a ton of pink shirts. So wherever I went and if I saw a pink shirt, I bought it. I actually didn't even take the price tag off this one yet. I got to do that after our interview. But I was racing around with all these books signing. I'm like, I need to put my pink shirt on. So I'm like Minnie Pearl. Wasn't that the woman who used to have a price tag years ago on
Yes.
her hat? Anyway,
Yeah.
so yes, I'm not the most obvious choice to write a book called Single Girls, but I back in the 90s when I got out of graduate school, I moved to New York City, I waited tables, I had this dream of being a writer, and I didn't know anyone in publishing. And I heard about
And
a
you
job.
come from Connecticut, is that right? You were born in
I come from
Connecticut?
Connecticut, but I feel like when you mention Connecticut, a lot of people picture Greenwich and New Canaan. Wipe
Right.
that out of your mind, everybody. I came from what is now a more suburban town, but when I grew up was pretty rural. And my dad was a cross-country truck driver, and my parents used to send me on the road with him trucking in the summers. Their stated goal was to, quote, make a man out of me. And I always joke they didn't get the results they wanted. Um, but those trips, I became a reader, really. And then I used to read the mass market paperbacks my dad would buy me in truck stops. Anyway, many years later, I moved to New York, sadly, after my sister passed away after her high school prom, with
Oh
this
my
dream of being a
goodness.
writer. And I didn't know anybody, but I had met this editor at a big deal publishing house, and she said, "You don't need a literary agent. Just send me your manuscript." So I sent it to her, and a month later, I got the manuscript back in a box with a polite rejection letter. Fine. But I pulled the manuscript out, and this little scrap of paper fell to the floor, and it was a note from an in-house reader mistakenly left in the box. And it said, and I quote, "I could barely make it to page 60, and I feel really badly for anyone who has to read the whole thing."
Oh my goodness. That's
I
just
know.
crushing, soul
I know.
crushing.
I was
Oh,
devastated. I didn't think I would write again, but I slowly started kind of writing 6 months later in secret. And around that time, I heard about a, a job from my mentor in graduate school. She told me about a part-time position opening packages in the books department at Cosmopolitan magazine. So off I went on the interview. I had no money, so I bought a jacket, a blazer at the Salvation Army for $12. And a friend of mine said, I said, "I guess I need to get a resume." She said, You're a writer. Writers don't need resumes." So I went on the interview, and the very glamorous books editor said, "Where's your resume?" And I said, "Well, I'm a writer. We don't have those." I think she hired me because she felt sorry for me. Uh, and my first day on the job was the day of the O.J. Simpson verdict, actually, which we watched in the office of Helen Gurley Brown. So that was the first day I met her. And I wasn't sure I liked the job. It was all these like gorgeous, very smart women. It was like a commercial magazine, and I was like writing this thoughtful literary novel. And my mother said, "Give it 2 weeks, and if you hate it, quit." Well, I stayed for 23 years, and I thought on that first day, what could Helen Gurley Brown and I possibly have in common? But actually, along the way, we became friends. And she, about a year after I started, she was kind of moved into a figurehead position because she was very mature at that point. And she would send me notes I have one here that I brought to show you. I
Show
have
us.
many of these. This one's framed, but this is from when I
Oh,
first sold my book. You can see that's Helen's letterhead.
oh
And we
my
stayed
God.
friends, and it turned out we did have a lot in common. Our love of go-getter women. I love women. I love ambitious, successful women. Uh, as a gay man, that's I've most of my friends were always women. Working in an office for 23 years, I was surrounded by really smart, interesting women. And late at night when I would, I moved up from opening packages. I became the books editor, the editor at large, executive editor, brand director in different stints, but I was always held on to the books editor job while I was doing the other ones because I love books and love writing. And I started writing dark, kind of noirish suspense novels like Help for the Haunted, which was kind of inspired by do you know Ed and Lorraine Warren, the ghost hunters? They're these famed ghost hunters. The Conjuring movies are based on them. Well, they were in my town. I wrote a book about them. I wrote a book called Strange But True that was turned into a film with Amy Ryan and Margaret Qualley and Blythe Danner. But I always wanted to write a very joyful book about Cosmo. And late at night, when I would be waiting around to approve pages finals to go to the printer, some during ship week of the magazine, I would pull the old 1960s issues off the shelves and flip through them. And I would think someone should write a book about this, which eventually became, I want to write a book about this. But you know this, Brenda, from being a writer. There's kind of in publishing, people want you to quote, stay in your lane. Like if you write dark suspense
Oh yeah.
novels, that's what they want you to do. So
Right.
the world, I don't know if you've noticed, Brenda, the world seems a little dark as it is right now without my adding
Yes.
more darkness to it. So I just thought I don't have it in me to write a dark suspense novel right now. And I just thought I want to write this book, Single Girls, which is about Helen Gurley Brown in the 1960s when she took over Cosmopolitan and made it the one of the best-selling magazines and certainly the most controversial and most talked about magazine in the world. So that's a long
Wow.
answer to your question, but there you go.
No, no, I love it. It's so interesting. So you stayed quite some time. Were you writing on the side while you were working at Cosmo then that entire time?
Yes, the thing about growing up with not a lot of money and moving to New York with no money, when someone offers you a job or work, you don't say no. You just don't know how. So even though I started writing books, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, well, now you'll quit the magazine." I was like, "No, I'll just do both." And it was a little unrealistic at times because it was a quite a demanding schedule editing big being an editor at a big commercial magazine. Uh, but I just would get up really early in the mornings and write, or write in the bathtub, write in the subway, write on airplanes, and I would just squeeze in my writing time. I probably, if I wasn't at Cosmo, maybe would have written more books, but I wrote the books I wrote, and I love doing them, but like I said, I just was ready to try to switch to something else.
Yeah, yeah, it's always nice to kind of have a change up in your career, something fresh. But do you think that all those years editing has heavily informed your writing, or what do you think the benefit? Have you been able to bring a lot of that experience and expertise? Do you think it's helped a great deal with your writing? I would think it would be great.
Yeah, well, Cosmo was all about getting attention from people and being on the newsstand. I would go to the with the editor in chief and sit in her office, and we would come up with the cover lines together. And it was always about trying to like reach out to the reader and get their interest and get them to buy the magazine. So it really taught me. We used to say this at Cosmo, or I used to say it when I was editing things. It's always people would always try to do clever language, but they would forget about clarity. And so I always say, don't put cleverness over clarity. Cleverness is great, but you want it to be clear. So I always try to make sure, well, two things. One, that horrible rejection letter I got years ago,
Yeah.
I always makes me think, you would think I would have burned it. Instead, I kept it in my desk because I always think I never want anyone to quote barely make it to page 60. I want them to turn the next page. So I'm constantly thinking, what's going to make the reader turn the next page? And at Cosmo, even the same thing, what's going to keep people reading? What's going to make them interested? So I definitely apply that to my fiction as well.
Yeah, my answer to that question is usually a really strong conflict. Conflict to me is the engine that drives the whole story forward. So I always make sure that I have a really strong conflict because that's how I keep my own interest in trying to write
Yeah.
the book and get through it. And I think that that's what grabs the reader too and gives that compelling page turning experience. So, what would you say is the hook for this book, Single Girls?
Well, it really opens when Helen, Helen, for those people who might not know, wrote in the early 60s, 1962, I believe, wrote a book called Sex and the Single Girl, which the title is a play on that being called Single Girls. But it was a really revolutionary call to women, saying, you don't have to rush into marriage with the first person your parents want you to marry or society wants you to marry. You can enjoy being single. You can enjoy your sex lives. You're dating different men, pursue a career. Half the country loved her, and the book sold something like 2 million copies in 2 weeks. The other half was pretty scandalized by these ideas because it seems so obvious now. Of course, a woman should be able to do that, but at the time it was shocking. So it really opens right after the success of Sex and the Single Girl, when Helen is about to pitch a magazine, because what happened to Helen was, after she published that book, she would receive hundreds and hundreds of letters from women across the country asking for her unique brand of advice, because she had a very distinct way of talking, a very unique way of thinking. And she and her husband, David Brown, thought, well, what if you get a magazine, pitch a magazine and create a magazine where you can give women your advice? So she went around Manhattan pitching a magazine that they called Femme. And no one wanted it. Nobody wanted it. But they finally said at Hearst Magazines, we're not going to give you Femme. It's too expensive to launch a magazine. You've never edited a magazine, but we'll let you take over this magazine that's failing. We're probably going to close it, but you can try it for a bit. It's called Cosmopolitan Magazine. And so the book opens the day of that meeting, and then she sets about hiring a team of women. One person who I knew, who was a real person in the book, is Liz Smith, the famed gossip columnist. I knew her. She once called me in her column one of her little pets. I'm proud of that. She was the entertainment editor at Cosmo when Helen took over, and the two formed a lifelong friendship. So it was really fun for me to be able to write about Helen's life, about Liz's life, and then to imagine the lives of the different editors. I use real cover lines throughout. So many things that factually happened, but no one was in the room for, so I had to imagine conversations. But because I knew Liz, Helen, David, I knew Cosmo, obviously, it it was such a joy, Brenda. I'm sure you've
Yep.
had those books too. Like, some books are, I confess, a little bit of a slog. You love the idea, you love them, but they're just really like you're struggling to do it. This book, my husband would drop me at the library every day. I'd go to the library, I'd stay there all day. I wrote it in a year and 8 months, and it was such a dream. It was such a happy time for me.
Oh, it's wonderful when you can get those and just kind of ride that creative wave. And I'm
Yeah.
actually impressed by what you said about Helen's husband, David, that he was in the trenches with her, actually advocating for women and supportive of her ideas. I think that that is pretty shocking for the time period. And I mean, we've come so far since the 60s to now, as far as how we look at women and their abilities and their rights. And so do you think she'd feel like we've come far enough? Where do you think she'd stand on where, we are now with women's issues?
I think she would think there's more work to be done, especially with what's going on in the world right now. I think Helen would think there's more work to be done. Uh,
Yeah.
she was pretty tireless about that. And one thing about David, it was, a lot of people have said this who've been reading it, and I felt writing it, it was such a part of the pleasure of it was seeing like a dynamic where a husband was so supportive of his wife and the woman he loved. He wasn't, I mean, he had a big career. He was a big film producer. He was one of the producers, I believe, of Jaws and of many movies.
Wow.
And he was not threatened by Helen. He loved her, supported her, helped her. So that was really fun. It was a fun dynamic, because I feel like oftentimes you'll sadly see in real life or read in the pages of a book a dynamic where the husband is not supportive. So that was really, I felt like, a unique thing to write about, and so much fun.
Well, it
And
says a lot
yes,
about him. I mean, I think it requires a healthy ego. It shows a man with a healthy ego who can also be that supportive of women and their significant other, right?
yes,
Because otherwise they may feel threatened, or that it somehow takes them down a bit to see her succeed. Or so I feel like it says a lot about him that he was this
it does.
confident, secure person. And so it's wonderful that he was able to give her that and help her be able to thrive.
He was such a gentleman, and when he would come to the office, it felt like kind of in the very best way, like he was stepping out of a time machine. Because there I was in the mid to late 90s when he was still around, where I mean where I would encounter him more because Helen was still at the magazine. And he would come and he had his hat and his coat and scarf, and he was just very friendly, a nice handshake, and he adored her. The two of them would go dancing at the Rainbow Room. They
Uh,
just they were a real special couple.
I love that. But it had to have been difficult. At least it would be difficult for me. Maybe it wasn't for you because you were such good friends with her and you had this insider view. But trying to do justice to the reality while also supporting the dynamics of the story and making it as compelling as I possibly can. I feel like I would maybe worry whether I was doing her justice, or did you have any concerns like that? Or you said it was just easy to write, so maybe you didn't
I
run into
mean,
that.
yeah, I don't want to say easy to write because it was a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of research, but it was, even though it was a lot of work, it was joyful to do all that work. So, because it's not a novel just about Helen's life. I thought really to tell her story, you have to tell the lives of the women she impacted. And I thought, well, they're the women she worked with. That's why it's called Single Girls, plural, because Helen's kind of like the sun, and then the other girls at the office are kind of like the planets revolving around her. So you have they didn't have a sex editor at the time, but the unofficial sex and relationships editor, you have Liz Smith, who was the entertainment editor. You have Angela, who was the food and lifestyle and astrology. Of course, it's Cosmo astrology editor. Then you have Belinda Sue Rickey, who was the books editor. And then you have Eugenia, who is the fashion editor. There's so much 60s fashion in this that was so much fun to write, joyful to write. But so I don't know. I didn't really have, I mean, I did keep it in my mind, but I really never strayed too far from what I knew of the core of Helen and who she was and what the magazine was at the time. And then I allowed myself, I thought, well, this is a novel. Like if you've ever seen The Crown, the TV show The Crown, about the
Oh
royal
yeah.
family, it's like, well, they condense timelines and they shift things for dramatic purposes. So I condense timelines and things because it's still a novel. I'm still,
Right, right.
so much is historic and based on real events, but I'm also trying to entertain people. And I also had so much fun. Like this is something real that I shifted. There's this scene set in a champagne glass hot tub. Do you remember seeing those on TV ever advertised? If you grew up in the Northeast, there were in the Poconos, there was this lodge. Anyone who grew up in the Northeast, if you ask them, they'll be able to sing the theme song, Beautiful Mount Airy Lodge. And there was a giant hot tub in the shape of a champagne glass. And I was like, oh, I have to put that in this book. I had this idea for it, but it turned out that that wasn't really introduced until the 80s. The guy had been tinkering with it. His name was Morris
Uh-huh.
Wilkins in the Poconos. So I made a very early prototype in the 60s where the sex editor goes with her boyfriend for a weekend near the holidays. And it's supposed to be this very romantic weekend, but it everything goes wrong. And so it was so much fun to write. Or Helen attended very unorthodox group therapy in LA in the 50s before she wrote Sex and the Single Girls. And she was known like to hog the floor. It was nude group therapy is what I wrote about
Oh,
write about in Single Girls, nude group therapy, which happened in the late 50s and the 60s in LA. So there was so much stuff that I were sparked by real things, but then I could imagine what happened, and it was a blast.
oh, that's so
Mhm.
wonderful. But I wish I could have been there for the conversation where you tell your agent that you want to write a book that is completely different than what you've been turning out. Because as you said, they want you to be able to build a name in a certain for an author. They like you to be
Yeah.
able to turn out similar things. Like, you want to be able to be known for this one thing. It helps them build you. So when you do this, huge divergence, then sometimes they're like, oh, a little pushback. They're not excited about that. But this was such a good idea. I can't imagine people didn't get on board right away. Was that a hard sell for you, or did you
Do
manage
you,
that without any
you
trouble?
you know what I did, Brenda? I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anyone except for my husband. I didn't tell anybody what I was writing. I just wrote it because I thought I want to write this book and I believe in it and I'm just going to do it. So I didn't tell anybody. And people would say, what are you writing? What are you writing? And I just didn't tell anyone. I think sometimes you must find this sometimes also the more you talk about it, it's better to just give everything to the page. And I know technically it's still a business, so you're supposed to tell your agent, your editor. I just didn't this time. I was fortunately between contracts, so it was like I'd
Ah,
finished a 2-book contract with my last book, so I knew, okay, like I'm just gonna do this and let's see what happens. And I just did it. I I love writing, and when I have something I feel really passionate about, I just want to pursue that.
so you wrote it on spec and then you sent it to your agent and said, "This is what I've just done," and then she took it out. Did you end up with a different publisher?
No, I met with different publishers, but my current publisher loved it. I had my previous editor had left and gone to a new house, but it was an editor, a wonderful editor named Carolyn Zankin, who edited the book The Wedding People. I loved that book,
Oh,
The Wedding
yes, I love
People.
that book. So
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I
And
read that
she
too.
she loved the book. She got it, connected with it, and yeah, and so here we are. And they were just thrilled, and they've been really
Super
wonderful. And so
supportive.
yeah, and so I'm doing the Today Show for the book on July. I'm doing What to
So
Read and talking
exciting.
about the books on July 7th, and then no, July 6th, I'm sorry, and then Good Day New York, and then I will go off on tour. And I'm just really excited. I'm sure you feel this way. Like I have this two sides of my personality. I love to be in the library, just quietly writing, but then I love to get out and meet people and meet readers and fellow
But I don't
writers.
juggle well with that. Do you? Like I don't toggle back and forth easily. I've had to learn how to juggle because I'm sort of a get in my groove, do my thing, make it happen, meet
Same.
my goals. And then to change channels makes it then hard to go back to the writing in between. Like I'm like promotion, interviews, whatever I'm doing. I love that because it's just as creative, it's just as
Yeah.
fun, marketing is. But then you get the writing, and so it's almost like two different hats, and I don't change them easily.
I'm the same way. I'm trying to learn how to do it because yeah, I'm a sort of all or none. Like I like to just be in my writing quiet phase, like dressing like, in my sweatpants and just going to the library and like hunkering down. But I'm trying to learn to go back and forth because I also do love this part of like going out and meeting people. I just don't do it as quickly. I don't toggle, that's the perfect word, as quickly back and
Yeah.
forth. But I'm so excited for the summer to go on tour, to meet people, to, talk with fellow writers. Like I love meeting other writers too. I feel so blessed to do what I do. Like I said, I moved to New York. I didn't know anybody in publishing. I had this crazy dream I'm going to become a writer. People would stare at me when I would tell people like, "Oh, I want to be a writer." They're like, "Yeah, good luck with that." So I feel
See, I
so
had the
blessed.
opposite experience. I never wanted to be a writer. It's actually pretty shocking that I ended up this way, but I caught my daycare provider drugging my children with cough syrup to get them to sleep all day while I worked. And so that was so upsetting to me and such a betrayal because it was a friend who came into my home, member of our church. And so
Oh
I
my
just, I quit
God.
my job. Yeah, I quit my job to stay home with them. But Ted had started a business that was really a risky business and things were not going well. And he was working night and day to save his business. And then I, have this happen. So I can't be the support I was being. I had to stay home with them myself because I couldn't trust anybody. And I was reading a good book at the time. And I remember closing it thinking, wonder if I could do this. And here I am, 80 books
Good for you,
later,
girl.
30 years later.
That's
Yeah, so kind of
amazing.
weird.
Yeah.
But more people that I interview are like you and say that they have, always wanted to be a writer. And I just always, I guess part of it was I grew up in a very traditional household. Sounds like you had a stay-at-home mom. My mother was very traditional and taught me that my role as a woman, which is why I'm so interested in this book,
Mm.
was to stay at home, be with my children. So I felt guilt for having left them, even though we had to financially. But my job was to support my husband and make him shine and make his career, flourish. So kind of a reversal
Yeah,
it set me on a different
in the
track, but it was
roles.
the silver lining, to that dark time. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the pinkness of your book. Do you like the cover? Did you have any
Oh,
input on that?
I love it. Usually oftentimes I go when I'm on tour, it's usually women in the audience and they come up afterwards and they say, "You're so funny and sweet, and your books are so dark and creepy. I'm terrified to read them." And I I always feel like a little bad because I'm so proud of my books, and they've done well, and people who like
Yeah.
suspense darker novels love them. But I always feel bad because I'm a people pleaser. But also I feel like I let them down, and I've always had in the back of my mind that this I would have this book, and now I feel like I can say to them, Oh, I have a book for you. It's the pink one. You
Perfect.
know. And
Yes,
so
it
when
will be
we were,
perfect for all those who don't like dark.
yeah, when we were looking at covers and the designer who designed this did such a wonderful job, they sent, you know how it goes, they send you choices. And there were other colors, but I, from the very start, was like, I love the pink. I love the pink. It just, to me, it looks like, you know, Brenda, when the books came yesterday, we pulled up on our porch, and I'll show you. They're on our little porch. Let me just show you right now. There,
Okay, these are all the books that he has to sign.
we were
House of
laughing
Copies.
because they on our porch, they're like,
Oh,
they're everywhere. But
oh
we
my
were laughing
gosh.
when we pulled up because there were so there's so many books. But what, I hadn't seen the finished book yet. That yesterday when these arrived for your club, I took them out back, took a butcher knife, actually sliced them open, and it looked like candy or something. Like they're just, it just was so inviting to me. And I love the
Yeah.
way that that's actually a pic photo of Helen Gurley Brown that I had
Oh,
sent
I didn't
them
realize
because
that.
I thought they could use the color. It's a very colorful dress she's wearing, but then they put her in black and white and used the pink. And I love the New York City skyline in the background with the Empire State Building because it's a very New York novel. You know, some of the editors in the book come to New York with big dreams. Helen comes to New York with big dreams. I mean, it's also set in the South where Helen grew up, set in Los Angeles where she spent many years, but it does have also a New York vibe to it. You know, like I said, Helen and David love to go to the Rainbow Room. There's all the kind of big New York energy and New York spots that we hear about,
Yeah.
you
Well, one
know,
of my
because
best friends is Pierce Maddie from Pierce Maddie PR, which is one of the beauty
uh,
brand publicity firms that are there. And he did the exact same thing, showed up in New York with a dream, and he knew how to bake cookies. So he would take the beauty editor's cookies and try and get coverage in the magazines for his different beauty brands. And so I
smart
definitely
guy.
identify with this story.
Yeah,
Yeah, identify with
smart
this
guy.
story. Yeah. So how
I
long do
hope
you
he
think it's going
does.
to take you to sign all those books, John?
We haven't started yet. You know, I did the Peloton before, and I was like, okay, when I get off, we'll start. And then we're chatting now, but we're ready. And thankfully, Thomas, my husband, is highly organized, unlike me. So he's already looked at the boxes, analyzed how long it's going to take. He says 4 to 5 hours. Does that sound about right?
It'll take, yeah, with that many, it'll take you at least 5 just because,
Okay.
hardcovers, they're less per box, and I'm pretty quick at it, and it takes me probably 5 to do that many,
Okay.
maybe even 6.
Okay.
So I just put on true crime in the background so you don't have to look up and sign away, and God bless
Yeah.
Thomas because he's gonna be cursing my name by the end of this day, so sorry, I'm so
Well,
sorry, but the readers are gonna love it.
we have a nice bottle of wine chilling for the evening when we're done on the other side of this, but
Perfect.
it's truly my pleasure. I'm so thrilled to be able to do it and sign for people, and I hope people love reading it. Champagne glass hot
I
tub,
think they're
nude
gonna
therapy.
love it. Yes, I think they're gonna
Yeah.
love it, and the other contents of July's box are gonna go with it really well, so I'm excited about that. So, one last question for you, John, before I let you get to signing. What is the conversation you want people to have once they read the book? Is there some takeaway that you're hoping will open up, people's minds to something or a conversation that these people
Yeah.
can have?
I'm so happy that you asked me that because here I am saying like, oh, it's so fun, it's so fun, you know, and it is such a fun book. But underneath it is 1960s New York City. Women's rights were not what they are today, and there are similarities to today, from today to then as well. And so a few things. First, I want people to have a good time. I want them to feel engaged. The book opens with a glossary of uncommon words because Helen had this quirky way of speaking. Wait, I'm looking if I could show you. Um, it Helen's favorite uncommon words because she loved to call people pussycat, and she'd say things like mouse. She called herself a mouse burger, pippy poo, frippery. She had this funny way of talking. And then I also put a Cosmo quiz in it because it's Cosmo. How can you write a book about Cosmo without a quiz? But so I
Right.
would love a few things. One, I'd love to reintroduce Helen Gurley Brown to either people who do remember her but don't really quite know the depth of her personal story and also the impact she had on women, and also a generation of people who might not know who she is. I'd also like, as I said, there's similarity in sort of like the issues surrounding women's rights now, back then. And so, as funny and joyful as it is, and I don't like go lecturing anything political, but it's just the facts of the matter. When you're reading it, there is this undercurrent of what was going on for women, which was I I knew abstractly what was going on, but writing and researching it, I thought, wow, I didn't realize that this was the situation for women at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So have a good time, learn about Helen's impact and her also, you know, some thoughts about like what's going on for women in the culture today versus then. My husband always describes it as it's like Mad Men but centered on the women. And that's kind of how
Oh,
it feels.
great.
It's like Mad Men centered on the women in the women's magazine industry in the 60s. So I hope people have fun. It was nice to have a different part of my personality come out on the page, so
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
nice.
for
Yeah.
sure. And I actually lied. I have one more question for you.
Yes.
What's next for you, John? Have you picked whether you want to write another book similar to this one, or are you going to go
Oh,
back to your suspense?
I'm quietly writing something, but I'm gonna give it to the page because I was not gonna say anything, but not being coy, but I just, you would think
You're not
now,
ready
having
yet.
written
You're
all
not ready
these
for the big
books,
reveal.
you're not ready for the big reveal yet, but I am quietly working on something that I'm having a good time with and I feel intrigued and excited about. So I'll tell
Wonderful.
you.
Well, we can't wait to see what happens next with you. And we're so excited to dive into this book as a book group and learn a little bit more about this iconic, wonderful woman.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, everybody. And I will start signing as soon as we're done. So,
Okay. Thank you.